Yes, guys, we are back in the vault, the safe place for paranormal evidence. You're here with me, G, and welcome back. Let's get into this one straight away. Okay, so I just lied a bit because we're not going to go straight into it because I've actually got some news to share. No, it's not the serious G kind of news that we've seen on the Vault before, because it's just news about myself, which I know is a bit narcissistic, but I thought you guys might be interested. So the first bit of news is that I'm just about to start my ufology diploma. And that's with the Open College here in the UK. They're telling me that it will be roughly about 6 months to do the course, but I'm hoping to do it much faster than that because it's self-learn, and so it all depends on how quickly and how much time you put into it. So I'm hoping to get through, and I'll explain in a minute why that's of interest to me and why I think it might be of interest to you. Now, the second piece of news, and some of you might have heard me briefly mention this before in the past on a Vault or on a Monty Zone, is that this year I'm hoping to launch my own YouTube channel. Now, please don't worry, that doesn't mean that I'm leaving the Vault. I'm very excited about the future of the Vault. I'm very committed to it. I'm very excited to get the Vault sessions back up and running again now that I'm uploading content to a normal, usual pace. But if you allow me to explain the new YouTube channel, which has got the working title, The Underground Paradox, and I'll explain that in just a moment. But everything on that channel is pretty much going to be on location. So I'm looking forward to completing the ufology diploma so that I can be more of a certified investigator. And for people across the southwest of the UK, hopefully they can entrust in me to come and investigate and share with me their experiences, their sightings, their encounters, and I can do some proper investigation and get footage of it and upload it. So that's just one example of location material and content that I'm going to be uploading. Second of all, I've already started working on one documentary, but I'm looking to launch the channel with sort of two, I should call them mini documentaries. The first one is basically going to be Ghosts of Devon and Cornwall. So I'm going on location to a lot of the top reported haunting locations, both in Devon and in Cornwall, and sort of making a bit of a mini documentary and taking you guys on that tour. And then the next documentary that I'm also working on as part of that channel launch is called The Search for My Truth, and that's all about my experience that I had when I was younger. And I haven't spoke about it much on the Vault or on the Monty Zone. It's something that I keep away from the channel, and that's a long story to explain why I do that. But it is something that I'm going to delve into and explore a little bit more and see if I can find the piece of physical evidence that might make that experience more truthful for me. But yes, so lots of different content that I'm working on. The reason why the channel is called Underground Paradox, because another big focus of the channel will be to talk about ancient civilization theory, and certainly my belief in it and the connection with ufology, and taking it to the next level of thinking about how ancient civilization and evidence that we're finding could relate to something that is connected to aliens or to space exploration and other life in the universe. So that's going to be really, really interesting, along with episodes that I'm going to be presenting my own theories of things that I've built up within the world of the paranormal after doing, several years of research. So that's my news. But let's get into what today's video is about. And this is an update video going back to something that I've talked about on several videos here on the G-Star Vault. And I've got to continue to talking about it. And it's another theory as well. So let's get our mind around this and let's get into what it's all about. Now, in the year of 2022, G-Star Vault brought you not only one, not only two, but three videos on the subject that we're going to discuss today. The first one was called Jaw-Dropping UFO. The second one that followed that was called Jaw-Dropping UFO Part 2. And the third one was called UFOs, the Rectangular Theory. And that's where this one's going to continue and B, the rectangular theory part 2. Just to mention, those 3 videos have had quite a lot of support from you guys, so just want to say a big thank you for that. I don't know if people are just interested in the content or possibly interested in the theory. I hope so. Now on the main screen right now, I am sharing some content, some of the photos and video that's featured across those 3 episodes, just to give you a bit of a reminder and a refresher. So to cover the data and to remind you once again, we had an incident that happened in Italy in 1979, and that's on the screen right now. That was a picture that was taken by a military pilot. Then we had an incident that happened in Wisconsin in the US, and that happened in July of 2021, and that was shared by a social media channel that has no relation to the subject of ufology and UFO pictures or anything of that kind of nature. Then there was a picture and an incident and a report that I came across from Wigan in the UK. And that again was just 2 months after the Wisconsin incident, and that took place in September of 2021. Already, even though we're only halfway through the evidence that was shared in the 3 videos, starting to see some similarities, both in sort of shape of the object, how it's captured on camera. But what is interesting is that all these incidents are either decades apart or a couple of months apart, so there's no similarity there yet. But let's continue to look at the evidence. Right, this next piece of footage, which FYI I'm playing at sort of almost double slow speed, was originally featured in a video entitled UFOs, UAPs and USOs. But then I pulled it out and also featured it within the episode UFO rectangular theory. And that's because when you capture the second object, it looks very similar to the object in the next piece of footage that I'm about to play. The one thing that I just want to also mention at this point is that across all of this evidence, the photos, the video footage, they're taken with different cameras. Some are mobile phones, some are proper professional cameras, and then others are military grade equipment cameras. So lots of different sources for this evidence. Lastly, this piece of footage, which was taken from the original 3, but it's the most recent. It was filmed in September 2022 in Portugal by a fairly elderly gentleman who has a keen interest in ufology. But besides the incident and the evidence from Italy in 1979, this piece of footage from Portugal is probably the most well investigated. In less than sort of 24 hours, there was proper paranormal ufologists, investigators on site looking at different elements to see if they could come up with an explanation. So a good piece, but when you look at the zoomed in version of this, it definitely looks rectangular in shape, but it is very difficult with the footage. I think it was filmed on a mobile phone, but it was difficult to get a real good solid close-up, but when you do, it definitely looks rectangular in shape. So hopefully you're pretty much up to speed now with where we're at with the rectangular theory. So you may be asking yourself, well, why am I talking about it again? Well, let me explain. Being part of the vault is really, really great because I obviously always have to be looking out for new evidence and keeping an eye on things that are happening as they happen. But being part of the vault also allows me now and then to come across archived information that we have in the vault that adds to something that I'm looking at and is a good piece of evidence. And so far, all the evidence that's featured in those 3 videos has come from the UK, from the US, from Portugal, from Italy, from Argentina, all over the globe. And this piece of evidence that I found in the archive actually comes from 2010. and from China. I'm not going to beat around the bush and just show you guys immediately the photographic evidence from this one. As I mentioned, it's from China in 2010 and very similar to the evidence that we've discussed from Italy in 1979. This incident and encounter was very heavily publicized, so let's go through the details for it. Let me firstly just say I apologize for any poor pronunciation of my Chinese as I relay the information for this one, but the original photo was taken just close to or outside of Hangzhou Jiuquan International Airport. It was taken on July 7th of 2010. Right after this photo was taken, the airport, the Hangzhou airport, was closed for 56 minutes. Basically, following this incident, on July 14th of 2010, a joint investigation of a group of experts from the Beijing UFO Research Society, which is shortened to BURS, or the Shanghai UFO Research Center, arrived in Hangzhou, and they visited the airport and interviewed witnesses to collect as much information as possible. One thing that was outlined in the report was that it wouldn't have been an airport CEO or a manager that would have made the decision to close the airport. The closure of the airport would have required the Chinese government or military to make that decision. This incident is actually recorded on Wikipedia under the history section of Hangzhou International Airport, and what it states there is that on the evening of the 7th of July 2010, the airport was shut down for an hour when an unidentified flying object was detected. Flights were diverted to nearby airports in Ningbo, Zhejiang, and Wuxi and Jiangsu. 18 flights were affected, though normal operations resumed 4 hours later. The incident captured the attention of the Chinese media and sparked a firestorm of speculation on the UFO's identity. So that's some of the details and information from this incident, but you might be asking yourselves, why am I discussing this one in relation to the content from the other 3 videos? Well, because of simple things like this. And this. Now, obviously, I'm not just going to sit here making comparisons against these pretty pictures, but just to mention, one point that I do find interesting is the image or the photo from China from 2010 clearly has red lights on the side of it, and so does the image from Wisconsin, USA. One looks like it's got a lot more red lights on it, but it is interesting that both the light emanating from the bottom and the sort of light setup on the side or the top looks very similar. Now, going back to the incident in China in 2010, and looking at it from the other side of the fence, and those that are a little bit more skeptical, you know, one of the comments that's been made about the photo itself is that, and you know, in 2010 in China, this could have been taken on a mobile phone, but the comment is that there could have been an exposure sort of technical glitch, and it's stretched out the object to make it look longer and appear longer than it is. But then my instant answer to that would be then, well, what if it was half the length? It would still be quite square. What is it? Now in 2010, as we all know, for, you know, the good sort of last 15 years, a lot of UFO sightings are quite easily explained away as drone or pareidolia on drone or mistaken drone. But, you know, to my knowledge, square drones aren't kind of made, or rectangular drones. To my knowledge, and even back in 2010, drones came in a particular type. I mean, you've got commercial drones that tend to look like this, and then you have militarized drones that can look anywhere from this or to this. I did try Googling square or rectangular drones, and I could not find a thing. Here's another counter argument for the long exposure explanation for this photo taken in China. And it's that piece of evidence that will be good to use in most counter arguments, really. And that's the footage from 1979 from Italy. That photo was taken by an Air Force pilot on a fighter jet as he's returning to base, using a camera on the plane, so a military camera. So the exposure explanation here, and this is a big rectangular dark grey mass of a thing that is floating in the sky or seemingly moving in the air. And I just don't think you can put it down to long exposure. But whilst we're on the subject, I have mentioned in the previous rectangular theory video that I'm not just exclusively talking about rectangles. I mean, these things look like barges to me. And a barge is a kind of rectangular shape, and the footage from Italy, the photo, just looks like some sort of, I don't know, industrial barge to me. The reason why I make the comparison between the picture from Italy 1979 and the picture from China in 2010 is because although one's shot during daylight hours and one's shot at the night, the two objects look very, very similar in shape if you imagine what one would look like at the other different time of day. Now, going back to that drone concept, there are those that have speculated. Both of these points are just speculation, nothing proven, but I just want to represent the other side of the fence, as I said. But, you know, with the whole thing that's been going on in the world in the last couple of decades, not only with drones, but with tensions between, you know, super nations across the globe, the US, Russia, China, and there's those that have speculated that this is an experimental drone that the Chinese government were testing out themselves and something went wrong. And this was back in 2010. And what we're seeing now is kind of, you know, the more advanced version of them, and that would maybe possibly explain why there's some sightings from 2021 and 2022, because that technology is now being fully tested and they're using it. But again, that for me is almost just as a much of a push as saying that this is some sort of alien spacecraft or a craft from another type of world. It is unexplained. We need to try and explain it, and I don't think easily to say that this is an experimental Chinese drone is an easy solution. However, there is one point that we must consider that does go some way to validate that theory of testing a Chinese drone in China, which obviously makes sense, but and also the need for secrecy, and that's the person behind the photograph. Nobody knows who that is. They've not come forward, they've not laid claim to this photo, and in this situation, because it's so heavily publicized by the media and covered by the media in China and obviously in other areas of the world as well, the fact that the person hasn't come forward, one, goes to indicate that they don't want any kind of, you know, short-term fame out of it, and also maybe because it is China, there's some element of fear behind it, especially if it was something that was top secret, experimental, or it could be something that is alien, and that's the need for secrecy. Still poses lots of questions, but it's an interesting point to think about. Okay, so in conclusion or summary or whatever you want to call it of this UFO rectangular theory. The reason why I'm just pulling all of this together is because I just find it so compelling and so interesting that there's so many similarities, not only in the photos and the footage and how the unexplained object, the UAP or the unidentified craft, how they look so rectangular and almost like barge-like. Almost makes me want to start saying, when we look up, don't look for saucers, look for rectangles. But being a long-term enthusiast in the world of ufology, I also am aware that in a lot of encounters and a lot of reports, the craft has been described as being cigar-shaped. So that's a lot of encounters. I would probably say cigar-shaped would at least account for about 30% of all witness accounts. But, you know, a cigar shape really is just potentially a rectangle seen from another angle. And again, sort of fits with that sort of barge image as well. And we're playing to all of that. So, again, a really interesting point to consider. Well, guys, that's it for me for now. It's been quite a long one, but thank you guys for coming along and joining me. And I really want to know what you guys think, so let me know in comments what you think about this rectangular theory. And if you see anything out there that's similar to these photographs or footage, then you can share it with us here at the Vault on our Facebook page. I'm going to put the address on the screen now, but I'm also putting a link in the description. I'm also putting links in the description to all the videos that we've been discussing on this update. I hope you've enjoyed this update, and you know, I'll see you guys again soon. And again, one last time, thank you for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you again soon. Stay safe.